Hello and welcome everybody to the Museum of Sonoma County's program in connection to Collective Arising, the Insistence of Black Bay Area Artists. We are thrilled that tonight we have our co-curator, Ashara Ekundayo, who co-curated this exhibition with Lucia Momo. And we have artists from the exhibition, Erica Demond, Shah Noor Hussein, Sasha Kelly, and Adrian Octavius Walker. The exhibition, Collective Arising, runs through November 27th. The Museum of Sonoma County is located in Santa Rosa, California, in Sonoma County, about 1 hour north of San Francisco. If you're in Northern California, please come see the exhibition. I believe our audience is from far and wide. Thank you all for being here to join us tonight. Before we get going, we acknowledge that the Museum of Sonoma County is located on the territorial traditional land of the Pomo people in Santa Rosa and serves Sonoma County, located on land that also includes the Coast Miwok and Wapo people, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it through the generations. I also want to thank our staff working our program behind the scenes today. Lana Michaels, our education and program manager, and Jack Castro, our education coordinator. Thank you both so much for all you do. Before we get really into the program, I just want to let everybody know that the Museum of Sonoma County appreciates everybody's support. We are a private nonprofit 501c3 organization and appreciate your support. To donate, please visit museumsc.org/donate. And we're going to put that link in the chat. If you like what you see tonight and you want to see more, please help us present as much as we can to the public for free. And for the Q&A, if you have questions, you can submit that at any time using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Shara and the panel will be answering questions and comments at the end of the Zoom. And now, Ashara Ekundayo is a Black feminist interdisciplinary independent curator, cultural theologian, arts organizer, and strategist. Her intersectional creative practice is rooted in the study and creation of Black archives, site-responsive ceremony, and the specific lives, traditions, and expertise of Black women of the African diaspora. Her philanthropic platform, Artist as First Responder, serves as a container for imaginations and inquiries for creatives working at the intersection of design, technology, and activism to heal communities and save lives. As former gallerist at Omi Arts Project Space and Ashara Ekundayo Gallery, she mentored a new generation of cultural scholars and art collectors and currently serves as a forum curator at the Museum of the African Diaspora and co-founder director of Black Space Residency, while also holding a seat on the advisory board of the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art's SICA committee. She is now an artist in residence at Headlands Center for the Arts, investigating and transcribing joy-filled pedagogies that reimagine collective liberation and document of cartographies of Black power. Ashara, please join me on screen. And I'm so pleased to hand over this program to you. You and your co-curator, Lucia Momo, have really put in an amazing program together for us, and we are getting great attendance and just fantastic response from the community. Ashara, thank you so much.
Beautiful, thank you. Thanks so much, Jeff. And greetings and welcome to everybody. My name is Ashara Ekundayo, and I get to be the guide this evening for the image Unbound, Photography and Film as Love Practice. So this is a panel discussion, part of the public programming in conjunction with the Collective Arising exhibition. As Jeff mentioned, it's on view until November 17th. And I also want to extend gratitude to each of you who is listening this evening, as well as the staff, all of the staff in the museum, for supporting all of the efforts and all of the programming, because it's been quite a journey, a long journey, in fact. I also want to offer a land acknowledgement to begin this program with. It's important that we state the land where we are, where we gather on to live and to create from, and where we host these kinds of conversations. And so today I'm greeting you from the unceded land of the coastal Miwok people in a place now called Sausalito, California. It's on property stewarded by the National Park Service at the Headland Center for the Arts, where I've been living for the last 6 weeks. And a little bit more about why we do land acknowledgements and people acknowledgements is that the lands were traditional birthright of Indigenous people who were forcibly removed and have faced centuries of struggle for survival and identity in the wake of dispossession and displacement. So part of our witnessing and speaking about the stolen land invites us as guests, if we are not Indigenous folk, to move with humility and in solidarity with First Nations people and all oppressed people. Before now, still here honoring the land, still here honoring the people. And so this is why it's important for individuals, for creatives, for curators, for institutions to state out loud, to make sound that says we witness, we see, and we understand, and also invites us to figure out how we're going to do better, because we can do better, yeah? So with that, it's really my pleasure to invite 4 of the artists who are exhibiting in the exhibition. If you haven't seen the exhibition in person, you may go online to the website and watch, do a virtual tour of it, but just a little bit about it is, it features the contemporary art of Black artists who have participated in interdisciplinary collectives. The collectives include the Noor Collective, 3.9 Collective, House of Malaco, Control Shift, and Black Space Residency. And the history of collectives being groups of like-minded individuals who have come together to achieve a common goal, to share resources, to build cooperatively, to create side-by-side in oppression and in opposition to hyper-individualistic capitalistic systems, and to make art because we must make art, because we must tell those truths. So it's been, over the years, really my pleasure to watch the unfolding of these 4 artists and their work. And my personal and professional relationships with them vary. But I want you all to just join me in welcoming Erica Demon, Sasha Kelly, Shah Noor Hussein, and Adrian Octavius Walker to this conversation tonight. And y'all come off mute and say hello and tell us where you are and where you're hanging out from, or where you're speaking from, where you're creating from this evening. And I can just go in alphabetical order instead of something else. So Adrian, where are you at? Come on.
Hey everybody,
Yeah.
I am talking to you all this evening in my moody space. It's also 8 o'clock in Chicago, Illinois. So I live and work in Chicago, Illinois now.
And Erica?
Hey, I am up here on the unceded territory of the Dormish peoples in Seattle. And I am actually working between here and the Bay Area right now. I feel like I am straddling these 2 lands. I'm working on and in between both of them.
Thank you. And Sasha?
Hi, I am tuning in from Ohlone land, so East Oakland.
And Shah?
Hey everyone, my name is Shah. My pronouns are they, them. Typically, I'm working out of Oakland, California, which is the unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people. But right now I'm in Santa Cruz, which I believe is the unceded territories of the Amamutsin tribal band.
Mhm. Give thanks. Well, forgive any kind of like little tech glitches you might find in the evening, because some of us are like working in places where the Wi-Fi is either non-existent or a little choppy, but we have a lot of grace and patience for each other around that. So don't worry about it. We'll keep figuring it out as we go. This evening, I really want to talk about love. And so, what we want to engage in, I mean, as love is a liberatory practice, yeah. And so when you name something, the image Unbound, is really an opportunity for us to, like, I think, decouple the idea of photography and film as an art form that is only for a few, when it historically has been an art form that has allowed many people to be able to capture a moment in particular ways. Now, given moving picture film is, I think, a bit of a different story, but all of these artists have worked in some form or fashion with the film as medium. And so I wanted to give us an opportunity to just kind of like make some opening statements about this thought of love as a practice. And in the description that I wrote about the talk tonight, I said that illustrated records of Black life through film and photography continue to be cherished ephemera as they bear witness to the beauty and the stamina of a people throughout multiple generations and multiple political uprisings and realities. So these four artists, I feel, are, even if they weren't in the show, are utilizing the film medium in a lineage that's about creating archives, about telling stories and families, about, I think, deconstructing the story as well, and centering the lives of the Black experience in their reflections through the camera and through the lens. So with that, I want to offer you all to make some opening statements, and then we're going to get into presentation and then Q&A, and that's how we'll run until 7:30 Pacific time. Erica, why don't you go first?
Thank you, Ashara. I was thinking, about bell hooks. I was thinking about, echoing you that the act of love is an act of resistance, and thinking about the act of self-love as nothing short of radical. That love kind of exists everywhere. I thought of the Pharoah Sanders track, "Love is Everywhere," and just 19 minutes of that one sentence, and thinking about how within one's life, if you have love, then it runs through everything. And so the art practice, like, I thought about this conversation about art and love, and I was like, well, there is no separation. There is just life and love, and everything else kind of sits within that. I think the works that are in the show right now, I see the photograph, I see the medium of photography as this point of departure, and how, I love the beauty of the medium. I love its kind of technical preciseness of shooting film, of this time between making the image, kind of creating the space that we create for each other in the process of this making, and kind of thinking about that love that is flowing through that space, but also that frustration as well. I think that love can be really frustrating and challenging, and kind of sometimes incomplete. And I think the works that I'm showing right now in the show kind of bring me to a place where that incompleteness is kind of is part of that process, and that the self-portrait, and that me kind of becoming in this space, and this movement through the mediums of like photography, 3D printing, clay and its firing in some way, metaphor for this diasporic journey that we are all on, and as like Stuart Hall puts it, like never arriving. And so I kind of think about that moment as maybe something else, like maybe the moment is like the photograph is more than a moment. Maybe it could be something like a map or like a landscape or a portrait. This fragment that's incomplete, like physically and conceptually, but from which we can build a story from, but it kind of only ever offers us more questions than it does answers.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm going to invite each of you to give an opening statement, and then I'm going to read your bio. So Erica, I want to tell people about, you know, some of your practice as well now, but I just wanted to let you all know how we're going to flow with that. So let me just read an abbreviated bio of your beautiful career. Utilizing interdisciplinary approaches, Erica Demon creates artworks in physical and virtual spaces that comprehend and inquire into the personal and group dynamics of the Black diaspora and the intimate and ancestral history belonging to themselves and their family. Demon has had solo exhibitions at Anthony Meyer Fine Arts in San Francisco, the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Archive in Berkeley, California, the Museum of the Photographic Arts in San Diego, just to name a few. And domestic and international group exhibitions include New Orleans Museum of Art in New Orleans, Louisiana, Phoenix Art Museum in Phoenix, Arizona, Pier 24 Photography in San Francisco, and the University of Derbyshire in the UK. So welcome, Erica, again, and thank you for really what you've also offered as an educator, I think, to community, and being committed to making sure that as many people who want to understand the technology of the camera have access to that. And I appreciate that you continue to be generous with your practice in that way.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Yeah. Adrian, can you give some opening statements about love?
It's two things when I think about love. First thing when I think about love is my kids. You know, it's been a journey with fatherhood for me. I have a boy and a girl, Cy Nori Walker, who's just turned 1 last week, and Emery Onyx Walker, she's 4. Emery was born in Oakland, California. We named her after Emory Douglas. And so living across the street from a Black Panther, Frederica Newton, you know, all this rich history, my time in Oakland, meeting all you all, learning from all you all, literally learning from everybody. I don't know if Yatunde is on this call, but learning from Yatunde, you know, I learned a lot being in Oakland. My time in Oakland was super special. Like I said, having my first kid in Oakland, really learning what community is in Oakland, you know, and that was like love. You know, I never met so many loving individuals in like such one warm space. And then being able to like curate experiences at my past job and bringing individuals in there, ensuring them that they can get paid no matter how they look, their background, their sex, whatever gender they represent, you know, that's for me, that's love, you know, and showing that. And I would say Oakland like definitely did that and embraced a lot on me and my kids, my family. As far as work goes, and one thing that sticks out, a particular piece that sticks out for me as far as art goes is The Love is a Message, The Message is Death by Arthur Jafa. And, you know, it's kind of like one of those series where for me, it's I can't watch without crying. And then also thinking about death in itself is something that I struggled with growing up as a kid, you know, with my mom. You know, she would catch me in her bed crying. She's like, "What are you crying for?" I'm like, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And, you know, just thinking about the love that she gave me, you know, and then as me and her shared a bedroom together until I was the age of 10, and her passing when I was 10 years old from an aneurysm, you know, I felt that love unconditionally forever, you know, and thinking this whole thing about me dying and not being here. And then I had this other person that I looked up to, my rib, my heart, is no longer with us, you know. So reflecting on the love is a message and all the nuances that it represents and everything that it represents in that particular film. And the fact that I don't know if you all seen the film or seen any updates, but he changes it often and updates it often and adds to it often. It's one of those things for me that, you know, it's strong, you know, and it represents so much.
Yeah, I'm over here testifying to that being one of the most powerful contemporary film pieces I've ever seen. So shout out to Arthur Jafa. Some of us had the opportunity to listen to him and Greg Tate at the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive a couple of years ago. It was the last time that we would have had the gift of listening to Greg Tate in the physical form, as he passed away recently. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for that reflection, Adrian. And I want to read a bit of your bio as well. Adrian Octavius Walker is a mixed media artist, photographer, whose work seeks to expand the canon surrounding the nuances of Black life in America through tenderness and grit by creating spaces to discover, document, and reminisce about the impact of Black culture. His fascination with the tangible is the driving force to expand his visual language through various materials, and his passion lies in using his practice to platform critical discourse around the imagination of Black nostalgia. Adrian work cast questions to inspire the viewer to investigate their own biases and opportunities for community engagement. And he cites both still photography and sculpture as the root of his commitment to archiving Black stories for the future. Thank you very much for that. Shah Noor Hussein, soon to be Dr. Hussein.
I love that you keep saying soon, because may it be so. May it be so.
May it be so, may it be so, yes.
Okay, love, yeah. I too am thinking about bell hooks. I just did a presentation on her earlier, and all the things about love. But the quote that came to my mind, interestingly enough, when I think about my work and I think about love as a practice, is this quote it's actually the name of a piece of artwork by Wuro Natasha Ngugi, and it's called "That's Not the Atlantic, There's a Disco Ball Between Us." And that title is actually repurposed into a book recently called "There's a Disco Ball Between Us," and it's a theory of Black gay life. But I think of love as the disco ball, and it's in the Atlantic, and it's reflecting for me diaspora. My work, as y'all will see later, and sort of my life's passion is about thinking through popular culture in the African diaspora. And a lot of my creative practice, as well as my academic practice, is connected to Sudan. So when thinking about love as a practice, I thought about my work in weddings and how a lot of these photos and my research is all around weddings, and that is a love ceremony. I'm thinking about the love letters to Sudan that I wrote and published when I was with the House of Malako, and how those were letters not only to like my family and to travel and to diaspora, but also to the land. Think about how the portraits I take are love letters to my family, my chosen family, and my friends. And I think about how archive building is a love practice, because it's like, especially when we as Black people and as folks in the diaspora are building our own archives, it's a love practice because it's a conscious choice to map our memories. And like Erica was touching on, love is not always like a pleasant, beautiful thing, but sometimes for me, diaspora and love is mixed with nostalgia and grief and dislocation and sorrow and migration and movement, but also a lot of joy and laughter and play. So it's bringing those things together, and that is a practice in and of itself. So I think I'll leave that there.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to leave it. The way that I remembered first witnessing your photography work was through the wedding images, and images of your family. And I remember you hosting a teach-in on Sudan at the art gallery, and how powerful that was and how important it was also for the aunties. The Sudanese mamas had come, you know, from the community to come and sit and witness you and hold space with you. And it also allowed us to have time to speak directly with these elders who had were living through, but had lived through many lifetimes of struggle and revolution. So yes, thank you for that. And I want to read a bit about your work as well. Shah Noor Hussein is a visual artist, a writer, and a scholar, crafting narratives at the nexus of Black feminist thought and queer diaspora studies. They are a doctoral pre-candidate and Coda Robles Fellow at UC Santa Cruz, where they are also teaching and serving as the managing editor for the Herald Journal. Shaw earned their MA from the California Institute of Integral Studies in 2017, and their photography and films have been featured in parts of ongoing exhibition called the Black Woman is God platform, as well as venues including Soma Arts Cultural Center, Ashara Ekundayo Gallery, Elena Museum, and the Aguas Migrantes Film Festival in Mexico, as well as the American Association of Geographers Conference in New Orleans. Shaw is currently working on their next book project, which is a multimedia study of popular culture and women's music throughout the Sudanese diaspora. So thank you, Shaw, for your work. I appreciate you so much. And last for right now is Sasha Kelly, and inviting you to spend some time giving us some thoughts on love and your practice.
Yeah, thank you. When I think of love, yeah, there's definitely a lot. I feel like love is it's very expansive, and then also it can be very nuanced depending on where we are in our lives. Right now, when I think of love, it's very full and curious. I'm definitely in a place of being curious of how can I show up for my loved ones, and how can I communicate my needs, which I think where I'm at personally in love makes me think of love in my work. Ashara, when Ashara first mentioned love as a practice connected to photography and portraiture, I thought about when I first started picking up the camera and doing street photography, maybe like 2008, between 2012. And I would just walk around West Oakland, and particularly, and also walk around Pittsburgh, California, where I spent a lot of my younger years. And I would be really excited to see Black people and kindly ask, can I take your photo? And I remember also, I say the dates because this is like pre-social media popping, pre-everyone having a smartphone, you know, and I was walking around with a film camera, which many people still hadn't seen at that time, and asked folks, you know, politely if I could take their photo. And it was so beautiful to see them light up and to see them be excited to be seen. And then once I was done, them ask, oh, can I see the picture? And me having to explain to them like, oh, this is film. You know, I'll get it developed in a few months. You know, sometimes I got people's contacts, and sometimes I just remembered their address. Like if I took it in front of a house to be able to give a print later. But I think love in my practice with photography and images really makes me think about the connection that we can have with the people that we are documenting, and also just the love for the moment. Again, the curiosity of, will this person say yes? And sometimes they won't, and that's fine, but the magic that comes when they do. And also just the love of archiving and documentation. Sometimes I look back at the contact sheets from that film, and especially in West Oakland, and I realize, like, when I walk those streets now, they look completely different. And the people that I see is also very different. So I love, yeah, just having had that time to document those communities, and knowing that, like, with this documentation, there is a piece of we were here that will last.
Yes, thank you for that. I appreciate you bringing up the importance of place and space and the impact of gentrification and displacement on our communities, particularly Black and Brown and Indigenous folk community, and especially in the Bay. And the importance that film documentation and archiving has played around that, and how we have to continue to take pictures, how we have to continue to, like, have imagery of those homes and of those families. And so that's been a pretty hard pill to swallow in a lot of urban cities, and definitely in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm going to read a little bit about your work as well. Sasha Kelly is an artist working within the realms of music, film, video, photography, and social practice. Kelly is a member of We Are the Ones and the House of Malaco, and has exhibited at the Siete Poencias, sorry about that, Gallery, Crow's Work, and Soma Arts. Her work is featured in the permanent collection at the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive, and has been published in Fader, Umber Magazine, and Black Futures by Kimberly Drew and Jenna Wortham. Collective Arising will feature a set of photographs that explore the complexities of queer femme motherhood through nightlife, imagery that typifies her chosen family and community, and photographs of Kelly at home with her daughter. So maybe we'll be talking about those as well this evening. At this time, I want to invite our photographers, our film artists, to be in a space of presentation. And I'm going to turn off my camera and invite Adrian Octavius Walker to begin this conversation with us, to speak about Collective Arising, the insistence of Black Bay Area artists, but to speak about my witnessing of his love of Black skin and his love of Black people and the way in which he uses the lens. So you have the floor, Adrian.
Sweet. I'm going to share my screen real quick, and then I'm going to talk about a series, Mortal Man, which is the very large panel piece at Collective Arising. Just to give a little bit of background about this series, I have to minimize this real quick. I want to read what Mortal Man is about, and the sitter that's in the photograph, Basil Kincaid, a good friend of mine from St. Louis, Missouri, also an artist. Mortal Man explores the issues around death and self-destruction while portraying the journey of emotional, psychological resurrection of a Black man. How does one kill themselves without dying? Asks Basil Kincaid, artist and subject matter of the photograph series, in which by seeing your true self, Mortal Man represents Basil's rebirth, a personal journey in new life, surrounded by the intimate textile materials from his life. Basil floats and dances with his pain and memories, one in front of the camera and other behind it. Basil and myself allowed being vulnerable together, connecting a deep level where we wandered the streets of Oakland, California. In this series, I captured the inner essence of the subject matter, showing his true self in the words of Kendrick Lamar, Coming Home. I want to talk about this series. Basil Kincaid had a show in Oakland. I believe that was in 2018, a year before I had left Oakland. and moved here to Chicago at Part 2 Gallery. And I wanted to photograph Basil dressed in one of his quilts, which his quilts are textiles and different materials from ancestors, found materials. He digs and he finds these what he calls souls. It's like pieces of people, pieces of life that he sewed together, and he finds himself draped in this like this moving vessel is what we called it. And the exhibition at Part 2 kind of like just encased that and showed like its own light. And I wanted to capture Basil while like, you know, wearing these, because I've been following Basil's work for a very long time, and just kind of like being like a brother of his and like brother of mine, and we just share these stories. I talked about death earlier with Arthur Jafa, and it's just kind of like having that connection about how we feel about death and where we see ourselves in the afterlife and all these things and what it is. And, you know, his practice helped my practice out, you know, and thinking about how I wanted to see my work and those things. And just him, he shaped a lot for me when it comes down to sculpture, because I look at him as a walking sculpture with this work and also other works by him. But this particular series here, it just like really connected with me as an artist and as a friend of his. And we just kind of like share these different stories growing up, how we felt about things, our past in St. Louis, you know, the dreadful feeling of being an artist, and also just kind of being seen in the light, and just kind of like wanting to just create work for ourselves and not for others. And it's just so on and so on. And just the growth of us in general, again, in St. Louis, you know, it's definitely like a hard place to grow up, but we learned early that it's about who you surround yourself around, you know, and making things easier for you, and just kind of putting yourself out there and being able to meet new people. And I told him, I shared like how this was a better feel for me to actually photograph him in a place that I adore and love, and that's Oakland, California. And he asked would I have wanted to make this happen in St. Louis, and I was just like, I don't think it would hit the same with it being in St. Louis where it was in Oakland, because like I said in the beginning of the talk, during the intros, I learned a lot from individuals in Oakland and about community as a whole. Even thinking about Ashara and I spent some time together here in Chicago this past summer with some food friends, and we just kind of rejoiced around food. And, you know, we talked about art, you know, we talked about shopping, and just kind of like what we want to do with one another, and what spaces we want to be in with each other, and like how we want to just kind of grow. And, you know, just being able to connect with you all, Erica Demon, you know, going to Erica's, going to, you know, visiting her in her space, you know, and like she's just showing me all this work. And then we're FaceTiming each other during the pandemic, talking about what work so we're doing. And, you know, Erica traveling back and forth from Oakland, and, you know, with her partner and stuff like that. And, you know, it's kind of like one of those things where just to see all of us grow, you know, me sharing space with Sasha in the past, you know, photographing Sasha and learning about Sasha's practice, and just seeing the video work and all that. It's just kind of like this whole intertwine. And I myself, like, not being able to be there for the show of the opening, you know, to our little friend that we don't need to talk about getting sick, you know, it just kind of like played like a huge like role in my life, you know, just kind of like learning, like, you know, the whole talk, you know, the saying, you win some, you lose some. That's kind of like how I felt with not being able to be there present time of this show. So it's just like Ashara sharing that space with me on FaceTime, saying how the layout of the show was. And to see that piece live in that space so large, and it just is like, you know, Ashara, when she hit me up on the phone on FaceTime, it was like, I didn't know, like, didn't know like how massive it was. And this was the largest piece that I've ever done in my life, you know. And you know, I'm gonna cut the camera off real quick, go back to myself. You know, being able to share that piece and just to see that, you know, for me, I don't see this work being shown anywhere else other than where it is now. Out, you know, I don't know where it would live outside of where it is now. And what I told Basil, once it comes off of from the show, I'm going to gift it to him, you know, because it is him. And it's one of those things where it's just like, we talk back and forth about the piece being for sale, and I didn't really care for it to sell or anything like that. It was just one of those things where I just wanted it to like have a place to live and just being on display all the time. That's kind of how I felt about it. So that's that work. I don't know if I have time to show some more work that I've been working on. If y'all,
Go ahead and show a little bit, yeah.
cool. Let me pull this up really quick. One second. I don't think I'm able to share a keynote. Is it possible to share a keynote on here? On Zoom?
I'm not sure. Try it, see what happens.
I'm not seeing how to share the keynote. It's like only showing me links.
Well, maybe not. Well,
Yeah.
you fuss around with it, but you can just share your screen. Just share the screen instead of trying to share the link. Just open it and then share your screen.
Okay. Yeah. Can y'all see that?
Yes, we see it.
Sweet. Okay. So you all are familiar with my work, We Matter. I basically took excerpts from We Matter and came up with The Power of Kinship, which it still explores the Black American beauty traditions amongst Black men in a spiritual way. The intimacy depicted in each photograph erases the mythology of threat often signed to Black men, instead of pushes the viewer to see the power of kinship within brotherhood. I seek to expand the notion of Blackness by challenging American perception of Black men in the community. This exhibition investigates Black men in the community. My intentions of this collection was to create intimate portraits based on the studies of human interaction in urban settings and untold stories. As this series is evolving, I wanted to create sculpture around it. And this is like one of the first times I really kind of dove into this whole sculpture. Well, I've been doing mixed media for a while, but like, this is like, I feel like I graduated to mixed media with this work. And, you know, I touched on Black hair rituals and basically preserving Black nostalgia. What you see here is images of a piece called Breeze. I made a ceramic barbershop floor. It's about 60 by 90 inches. And what I basically did was like made like I said, like a floor using resin. And I used different materials from the barbershop, from definitely past experiences myself being in a barbershop, growing up in a barbershop, and also just getting kitchen cuts. Thinking about like Jet magazines, the pink oil moisturizer, the push broom with the hair inside of it. This is the piece, and it's full. And I wanted to encase this, and show what my experience looks like in the barbershop. This piece took some time to make, and it was definitely one of those things where I kind of like, once it was completed, and shout out to my brother Curtis Taylor Jr., who was the curator of the show here in Chicago, where we kind of like put our heads together to make this piece come to life. Like I said, I just wanted to show like my own experience of like what a barbershop is, and just kind of create that up close in person. Another piece here is Blue Magic. Blue Magic was created using actual Blue Magic hair grease, where we basically did the whole thing of creating waves. You think of Blue Magic, you put it in your hair to wave your hair up, and then we wanted to make these wave-like motions in the grease. The whole basis of waves comes from waves in the ocean, waves in your hair, and we poured resin on top to seal that. And one of the best parts about this piece is, for me, is the fact that you can smell it, and it smells like Blue Magic. And when we had got the sign put on top of it, the actual the lights put on top of it with the actual font and spelling of Blue Magic on top, this piece was like really one of those testaments of how and why, and is it possible? And it definitely was possible. It definitely was one of those things, like a first for me. I just kind of like went into it, and yeah, I just like I said earlier, when like big piece is the big piece of basil, it's just one of those pieces where it's just like I wanted to have a space to always live. Another piece that I created, this everything is like all hands on. This is paying homage to We Matter as a whole. This piece is used with different materials from the beauty supply house, and I wanted to spell out We Matter. And this, I think it's like about 70 by 90. I don't remember dimensions. I'll get back to you all on that. But this is probably the largest piece I've ever done, and the heaviest piece I've ever done. This is probably over 100 pounds. In the background, and I'm gonna skip, I just want you all to sit here and see this piece here. The background is all black barrettes, which took probably like 2.5, 3 weeks to put down, to fill in this space and to showcase like We Matters, like all spelled out. And like I said, materials from the beauty supply. I have never went to the beauty supply house so many times in my life. I smell like the beauty supply house. I know if you all even think of what a beauty supply house smell like, it just it smells like hair, like different hair materials and stuff like that. So this room that I was cooped up in for 2.5, 3 weeks making this piece, it was one of those things that's like kind of brought me to the place of like I can do anything. And as we zoom in and just see, like you all probably thinking how everything is sticking. It's like literally super glue and resin. I spent a lot of time using resin and working with resin. It's definitely a science to it, with using it. And it was fun. It was definitely fun. It was challenging. And this piece in itself was just like one of those things where it took a lot of time for me to come up with how I wanted the layout to look. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's, if we have some time at the end, or folks have questions or reflections on it, maybe we'll have time to come back to it, but it's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian, for your time and for your work. I want to invite Shah Noor to give some thoughts here and some imagery to your work and your love of the archive and design work through photography and film. So Shar, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ashara. I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, so Ashara referred to me as like soon to be Professor Shah, so I could do an entire lecture, and I will refrain because this is my life's work. It is also, you know, very involved in my PhD. I'm in a conference right now, and I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm going to hopefully tell some stories and share some images with you all. Let me just make sure I got myself situated here with my own timer. Okay. So again, my name is Shah Noor, my pronouns are they, them, and this is my presentation on my photography and film practice as a love practice. This is my bio that Ashara already read, and a portrait of me and my cousin on the Nile in Sudan. And so, speaking of Sudan, which is a large subject of my work and a part of my positionality as a person, I do want to acknowledge that we are right now in the 1-year anniversary of the most recent military coup that happened in Sudan. In 2019, my people rose up after 30 years of military dictatorship and oppression under the hands of an Islamist regime. They ousted their dictator. And after about 2 years of rigorous struggle to try to get civilian rule, we endured a military coup. And so right now, folks are fighting again for another military dictator to step down. There have been protests every day. And so this talk, as well as like most of my life's work, is an offering to my family in Sudan, my ancestors, and my future kin who will be there. And so this is an offering. And instead of a moment of silence, I wanted to share a little clip of a film that I made that was actually in honor of the revolution. Before I go to the film, I'm going to show 2 screen grabs from the film. And this is the protest chant that is repeated several times in the beginning. It's important to me because the woman who's chanting is also a singer. She's a freestyle singer in a local town in probably West Sudan, and she's known as a hakama. And usually they sing music that is under the genre of girls' music or women's music, aghani and banat. But here in this video, she is freestyling a protest chant. And the chant is, any cause will be pulverized. We have no fear, we have no fear, we have no fear. And in Arabic, it's ayi cause, nadusudos, mabnakhaf, mabnakhaf, mabnakhaf. And so let's just take a moment. I'm gonna come out of this screen and move into the film. And it's 2 minutes, and it's an experimental piece of work. I also think this is nice to see because in the virtual tour, you can't necessarily see all my film work. So this is an example of a film that would have been in the show and will be in another show. And so I'm gonna mute myself. Let me know if you can't hear it after I mute myself, and I'm gonna click play.
جاية في مدني أغني أحلى كلام، في مدني أغني أحلى كلام، أطيري بسامع ويدوني أبو سلام. جاية في مدني أغني أحلى كلام، أطيري بسامع ويدوني أبو سلام. جاية من مدني أغني للحلوين يدخلوا الحفلة ويقولوا ما طالعين. جاية من مدني أغني للحلوين يدخلوا الحفلة ويقولوا ما طالعين. جاية من مدني أغني أحلى كلام، أطرب السامع والدنيا وسلام. جاية من مدني أغني للعايدين يكرهوا الغربة ويقولوا ما راجعين. جاية من مدني أغني للعايدين يكرهوا الغربة ويقولوا ما راجعين. جاية من مدني أحني نغلى عريس أحني نفيد ولسعادة يقيس جاية من مدني أجرتك أحلى عروسة بشري داما ودمجر فيها وابوس جاية من مدني غني لي مدرمان أغني للطيبة والناس دي وحنان جاية من مدني أغني لي مدرمان أغني للطيبة والناس دي وحنان غني للعايدين سمحة يا مدني وأغني للواقفين
السودانيين طول عمرهم شريفين واحرار، احنا حنجيب الحكومه المدنيه وبرهان كذاب ومديك كذاب ويسقط الحكم المجلس العسكري.
حنينة يا مدني حنين يا مدني حنينة يا مدني.
Okay, back to presentation. So we're going right to Sudan. If y'all aren't with me already, we're there. And now we're gonna go to a wedding. So let's see if this will let me click to the next slide. We pile in a car, you and all your aunties and your cousins, take a ride down Sudanese streets, get to your auntie's front yard, and there's a band playing. And this is a part of the process. You have lunch there, and everyone is enjoying each other's company. And making her way to the center of the dance floor, we have Hawa. I really wanted to take a moment of pause to talk about this photo. It was one of the first photos that I took that I exhibited in a show. I called the photo Hawa. Hawa is the name of the woman, and it also is a word that means the wind in Arabic. Hawa also is the name of the African version of Eve. Like in the Adam and Eve story, the original woman, the first woman, is Hawa in Sudanese and Arab lineages. So I've heard from my folks. So I wrote a poem for Hawa to go along with this. And I can't pull it up now while I have the screen sharing, so I'm gonna try to see if I can remember it. She came from Nigeria to make home in Sudan, the African Eve. We called her the wind. And after I wrote this poem for her and took this photo and loved it and wanted to show it, I had to go ask Hawa about it. And I bring this up to talk about the praxis of love, to go and ask permission, to get that permission. And a part of that permission for me was also printing this photo and bringing it to her. Hawa works with my auntie. She's worked in her house her whole life and has her own kids now and does her own thing and still works with my auntie. So I was able to go to my aunt's house, tell Hawa to meet me there, and I gave her a copy of this image. After we have lunch together at our auntie's house for this wedding, we get to go to the wedding, take another, not pictured here, drive through the city and show up to greet the bride. For me, love as a practice is also about consent. And so this photo here, interestingly and surprisingly, was also taken with a lot of permission and intention. So after I took the photo, I realized that one of my aunties in this photo didn't have her face covered in the photo. And that's usually how she sort of walks through life. This is a slightly brightened version of the photo where you can see her grainy, really, really faded in the background. And so when I talked to her about this image and the fact that her face wasn't covered, if I am to blow it up and put it in an exhibit, which I have done, it's the grainier version that shows her face less. And love is about consent. So there's that too. And then we get to the band. So great. We get to see the band. And I was going to read something here, but time has gotten away from me. And I remember you, Ashara, saying 10 minutes was kind of the idea. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I wanted to share, which was capturing a moment. I think that was one of the prompts that you had given us at some point. How do we capture a moment in our photography, and how do we think about that love practice? This photo and the series that I'm about to talk about was captured at my cousin's wedding. And I have this little vignette that is published in an anthology called As of Late. And I can drop the link for that later if folks want to read it. But in this story, I actually describe in detail how I captured this photo, how I entered the wedding parlor and I just went outside for a break and I came back and my cousin was dancing in the middle of the dance floor where she was the whole night, sweating her ass off, makeup on her face all smudged, even though we had just spent hours before putting it all on. And my glasses were fogging up in this like wedding hall in the middle of winter. It was just so warm with all the moving bodies and smells hitting my face and fragrances. And I turned my attention to the stage and I get a photo of the band. And the rest of it is in the poem, but it was a moment, a very special moment. We have, people in the middle of song, a mouth wide open, a hand falling towards the drum, a beat in progress, and this beautiful, important smirk. And the whole process is love. This portrait to me is love. Every time I look at it, I feel the love, the embodied moment where we all recognized each other. I saw Soraya in the middle of the stage and she saw me and she gave a little smirk and I smiled back and I took the picture. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we've gone through. Now I want to just talk a little bit about the work that I have inside the exhibit. And so one photo that I have is this portrait of my auntie that I took a while back, another process of consent and love and practice. There was a lot of conversation about when and how to use this photo, what caption was underneath it when I posted on Instagram and so on. And when it was a decision to put it in this show, I told my auntie about it. And since Octavius, you talked about, Adrian, you talked about like giving your friend the portrait to them. I told my aunt that this was going to be up in the gallery. And she was like, well, if we're putting a price tag on it, I want a cut of the sales. And I was like, absolutely, you got it. I mean, there's no art without you. So there's all these negotiations, right? That is a part of the love practice. And to talk a little bit more about the work I'm going to continue doing is portraits. I'm working on a portrait series right now that's diasporic. It's my auntie and my cousin actually in matching outfits for the wedding. They made these taubes themselves, decorated them together. And so I think that like taking a portrait and taking a picture is a really beautiful gift. I'm just gonna go through these last few portrait examples and then I'm done. So I'm not sure if I heard somebody unmute, but I just wanna let you know in case my time is up. So this is just the work that I'm building. And I'm excited to keep building. And this is in diaspora too. So this is my auntie Jamila, who is here in the Bay Area. Some cousins over here in America. Protest shot of two kandakas from the back. And also part of my work is embodied dance and performance. So I'm a part of a Sudanese dance troupe. And this is some of the work that we do to continue to let folks know, about the culture. And that's it. I think this is my last photo. Thank you. Maybe that's the last one.
So beautiful. Thank you, Shaw.
Yeah. And I have a clip of my film I wanted to show, so I'll show it later, the one that's actually in the exhibit, but I want to be mindful of time and let everyone share right now. So thank you.
Thank you. And I also want to invite the folks who are listening to feel free to put questions or comments into the Q&A. And if you have a question at any time, just put it into the Q&A and we can try to get it in, okay? And so Sasha Kelly, you have the floor to be able to share about your work and whether it be the exhibition or just the reflections of your vast and diverse film practice that is always love-filled. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited to show this stuff. I'm gonna pull up the link. Oh, I had a different, whoa. Okay, 1 second. Technology. Okay. So I guess I wanted to start with talking about the work that is within the exhibit. I created an installation that is a mix of photographs, an altar, and also a script, which is a long form poem. These images were taken in, I believe, 2018 as a huge collaboration. And speaking of love, collaboration is definitely a big part of my practice, and a big part of it that I love. I really enjoy the process of like seeing people. For this shoot, an example, Astu is one of the models, and she is an amazing vocalist, multi-talented human. And she is someone that I've seen for years. So being able to see this person and like really appreciate what they're bringing to the world and be like, oh yes, let's collaborate something together. The collaboration is really exciting to me, this collaboration in particular, because at this time in my life, I was in the House of Malako and also working with a lot of other artists that were like within a previous collective that we had, Maladoma Collective. And at that time, we were having a lot of conversations around kind of like increasing visibility and expanding our careers. And to be honest, a lot of it was waiting for other people's validation. And this shoot was such a big leap into, you know what, we're going to do these things ourselves. And just being able to honor the craft and the skills that everyone has. And it felt really good because it was everyone on the crew was femmes, and that felt really important to me with this shoot. Included in it is Astu and her sister Grace, who you would see here. The styling is by Akine Cimarron. Our producer was Amanda Bean. And Akine also got the clothing from Regina's Door. And Regina Evans is a big collaborator, someone I've collaborated with a long time. So I was really excited to bring all of these people together. And then another great tidbit and tie-in is this shoot was actually done at Visco, in which Adrian Walker used to work there, and he was a connector and a plug for us to have this shoot. So I think like from beginning to end, this shoot is a testament to community and collaboration. This is one of my favorite images in the shoot, and it was actually inspired by Davia Spain, who is a phenomenal musician and also performing artist, who I believe is currently located in Los Angeles and spent a lot of time in the Bay. And Davia is someone whose vocals I definitely play. And I somehow fell upon her performance artwork. And there was a piece that she did a few years prior that included this movement. And I was just really inspired by it and wanted to create something in Lineage and just be like, okay, let me take notes from those people around us, that inspire me. And again, talking to collaboration and community and those connections. This last image is just another testament of love. I think one of the special things for me about being with these two people on set is the their relationship and them being sisters and having such a strong bond. And like with taking portraits, I really enjoy people watching and just seeing how folks can, like the small things that people bring when they're engaging with each other on set. And Astu and Grace were so gentle and so caring. And they were also so in sync without having to use too many words. And I felt that that was really special. In this image is very telling to that for me. As mentioned in the bio, music is a part of my practice, and the nightlife is something that I very much document, participate in, support. And for a few years, I took a lot of time documenting the nightlife. So the first image is from The Universe is Lit, which is a Black and Brown punk fest that started in Oakland, California. And the second image is a crowd shot from a Princess Nokia show. And I think what really speaks to me from both of these images is just like energy. I feel like the first image is very charged, and it really shows like, oh, these people are just exuding. Like, I feel like when I look at this image, I can feel the sweat and the moisture in the air. And the second image is really special to me because it was a packed show. And a lot of times when I'm at concerts taking pictures, I will just take the leap to hop on stage until someone asks me to leave. And within this image and this series of images, I started to see, once I got home, a lot of people and other artists that I knew within community. And I just felt, again, like this conversation of collaboration, and just showing how much we are all connected feels really important to me. And also documenting of just the reminder of like, wow, we lived in this moment, this was here. And also I just love the Black woman in the center and her beautiful bald head. These two images are from an event that I co-produced, Twerk for Mother Earth. So as I mentioned, I'm a co-founder of Malidoma Collective and the House of Malico. And one of our, I guess, long-standing events that we produced is called Twerk for Mother Earth, which is a dance party, and in some instances, festivals that really centered consent-based culture in Oakland, and amongst our community. In a lot of the productions that we did of Twerk for Mother Earth, it was really important that we had femmes and queer folks to the front and always centered our voices and our artistries, and more than anything, a safe space. So like within the first image, which was actually the works that was featured in Black Futures, it is all Black femmes, you know, dancing and getting down in a, I believe it might have been an electric slide movement. And the second image is from a night event, which is definitely more sensual, more sexy. And I think both of these images together, oh, whoa. Sorry, I had a tech glitch. Both of these images together just show the duality of like, oh, things can be very joyful and bright and light and airy. And then again, going back to the underground and sensuality. Oh, I had a timer. Going to the underground and the sensual and the sexy. And the last thing I wanted to show, but I guess I will just mention shortly, is a video from a new piece of work that features a clip of Bell Hooks. And I will just end with a quote that she mentions of how we are constantly fed images that create a feedback loop that tell us about ourselves. And what inspires me about this quote is thinking about the images that I create as a photographer, as a filmmaker, and also as an archivist, and how with all of these practices, it really brings back the power of being able to shift the narrative and also center what we want. So I definitely go back and think a lot about Bell's work in this New School lecture as a reminder and a grounding force in what do I want to be photographing. And yeah, that's what I'd like to share this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I also appreciate the breadth of the kinds of love that you're talking about, which also includes erotica and sensual love, and the collaboration and the consent pieces that also connect to other folks' work here as well. And I think, maybe at a later date, we'll have another conversation, particularly around music culture, dance culture, eros kind of love, and how that has shown up in film as well, in ways that are not about being sexually exploitative, but in ways that are about honoring the divine erotica, and how that has shown up in your work. So thank you, Sasha. And then finally, my friend Erica Demon, who I have known as a photographer for many years, and now I'm getting to learn more about your expansive multidisciplinary practice as well. You have the floor.
Thank you. Okay, let me share my screen right now. Okay, I will set my timer and hope that I can deliver. Okay, so I just love the fact that Bell Hooks is kind of peppered throughout the whole of this kind of program, and I have been so immersed in her thinking about her comments on love, and thinking about love as a verb and not a noun, and thinking about this quote that she gave to us. The moment we choose to love, we begin to move against domination, against oppression. The moment we choose to love, we begin to move towards freedom, to act in ways that liberate ourselves and others. And of course, I think so many of us have talked about love, and a love that sits outside of this kind of romantic love that we've been kind of forced to believe through this hegemonic narrative that surrounds it, and thinking of community love and thinking of self-love. I want to talk a little bit kind of more about kind of my more recent works and research. And one of the things I've been doing with my practice is kind of turning inward and researching kind of in deeper ways my family's recent history, beginning with their departure from Jamaica as part of the Windrush generation to the United Kingdom. And it's a narrative that's not really been shared in my upbringing. My maternal family left their farmland in Leicesterfield, which is in the parish of Clarendon in Jamaica, and moved to Nottingham. And they went from being like farmers and educators to being factory workers and miners. And it took them 5 years for everyone to kind of make it across the Atlantic to the UK. And each person, my uncle, my mum, and my grandparents came over one at a time. And when they were all there, when they arrived it's quite a hostile environment. And I think about the love that they had for each other that held them together, and also kind of the loss that they also felt. And I think about that in tandem of what it now means for me as well to kind of exist on these various grounds that I move between. I also think about this personal story as part of this broader Caribbean British experience. So here are some photographs of my mum. My mum, if I can put it delicately, is someone who likes to collect things, and that's me putting it politely. And here's a photograph that I found of her whilst helping her declutter. And this photograph on the left-hand side was an image that my dad made of her when she was 20. And I just love the joy and the happiness that I can see coming through. And she can't remember where it is, but I believe it's kind of taken on the East Coast of the country. And this kind of little suggestion of a structure on the side, I believe, looks like a mobile home to me. So I believe that they went on holiday together, and I just love the joy that comes through this image. And then on the right-hand side, it's an image that I made of her in her home. And she's lived in that house since she was 21. So she's lived in that home for 50 years. And it's a really big part of who she is. And, her love of collecting antiques. She has this chaise lounge that she is kind of draped over, and a little bit more stoic than on the left-hand side. But I kind of with this act of permission that she's given me, we've begun kind of talking more about the experiences that she had and the family had when moving over to the UK. And kind of with this research, it's, kind of understanding the family's experience, it's kind of made me think about turning the camera on myself. And this kind of began pre-pandemic and to the present moment where we find ourselves in existence. And thinking about self-love as a radical act, kind of making these portraits. What's really interesting is like when you're using a film camera, in my case, I use a Hasselblad. When you look into the lens as a sitter, you can see the space where somebody should be, where the artist should be, where the image maker should be standing. And so effectively, you can both see each other through the lens. And I think about that space where there's nobody there, standing there in physical form. And so when I started making these portraits of myself, I felt kind of ready to see my becoming. I've lived here for 11 years. When I moved here, I wasn't an artist. I had come from an advertising background. And so there'd been so many transitions and changes that I felt that I was now ready to see myself. But at the same time, I wondered whether I could hold myself in the way that I hold the people that I collaborate in my other portraiture projects. I wondered if I could be the image maker and the subject, and could I tend and approach the making of my own image with the same care. So these images were made whilst I was in residence at the Headlands Centre for the Arts, where you are now, Shara. What a transformational place. At the time I was immersed in the writings of Stuart Hall. I was reading Yaya Gayashi's Homecoming, as well as holding an archive of over 2,000 photographs that my friend Cheryl Ward and I had purchased off eBay. And really it was an act of care that we purchased those images, because when I saw these 2,000 images of African-American families, I felt that someone needed to hold them and tend to them. And I still have them in my possession. They're sitting in these archival boxes, separated out, ready to be returned to hopefully a relative that I can find. And that's a big and long and challenging project that I have. So these images, I began making them at the Headlands, and they started off as black and white film portraits that I then scanned into editing software. So there's a scan of the image, and then I 3D printed them, and then I imprinted them into clay. And what's really interesting is that I haven't shared these black and white images with anyone, with a wider audience. Like, this is the output which I'm really keen to share. And just thinking about that time and how not only was I able to hold myself, but also kind of in the opacity of not sharing these images, kind of save something for me and kind of hold myself as well throughout this journey and process. During the pandemic, you know, obviously no one was kind of going out, and it became really important for me to document this time and also kind of document the space that I was in. And I began making these instacked images. And so kind of being able to have this immediacy of the image and to be able to hold it in my hand, kind of again felt like I was also holding myself with care and with love. I made these images in a space that I'd rarely had any interaction with. It was in our spare room. And for 7 of the 9 years that we lived in San Francisco, we had a roommate. And so I didn't really understand what happened in that space in terms of the light. And I spent so much time in there, just kind of seeing, and also seeing myself in this becoming state, archiving this moment, and just holding myself. And this particular work I shared in the New York Times as part of a feature called The Sources of Self-Regard, which was written by Deborah Willis and takes from the Toni Morrison, a collection of essays called The Source of Self-Regard, which is a seminal read. And so I have about 40 of these images, again, which are kind of all in archival boxes, kind of stowed away, ready for something, but I'm not too sure what. But it's so interesting that with these particular portraits, I felt this need and acceptance that they could be shared to a wider audience, whereas the work at the Headlands, certainly those beginnings, those images that are really a departure kind of feel more tender and more precious. So these kind of meditations to tend to, you know, I've kind of been moving through this kind of formation of self through ideology and theory. I think here of like Sylvia Wynter. I think of the material, memory, language, and all in abstraction. You know, I think to the land, our diasporic being through horticulture and growing practices, as well as our changing climate. And so here's a photograph of this single okra pod that I grew in Seattle, which is now where I reside. During the pandemic, my partner and I moved up here, and with that move, we gained access to land, and that is something that I was so excited about, and also nervous and kind of really tentative about what I would choose to grow, or what currently grows in the space. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to try and bring a diasporic growing practice to the ground. So thinking about indigenous crops, thinking about crops from the UK, crops from Jamaica and from West Africa, and okra was one of the seeds that I planted. And you know, a lot of people, quite rightly, and even myself, didn't believe that I would be able to harvest anything from okra with the current climate in Seattle. But this growth I kind of see as a metaphor of catastrophe and possibility, kind of the okra intrinsically linked to our journey, our ancestors' journey across the Middle Passage, and this growth made possible by tending and by this kind of intense dedication and care that I gave to this plant, and also kind of arriving during the hottest summer on record in the Pacific Northwest. And so with this yielding of this pod, I made this photograph just before I kind of plucked it, and used photogeometry to make a 3D model of it. And then I've actually still got the pod and want to kind of harvest the seeds next summer, well, next spring actually. And so yielding this pod, I kind of replicated it and essentially archived it into 480 3D printed pieces that I suspended over this plexiglass. And kind of thinking about the plexiglass, you know, as a material used to segregate and divide, but through this molding of heat and hand, oh, there we go. I feel like it becomes a multitude of possibility and maybe a little bit of magic in there too, because Black people are magic, we are magic. I'm going to end right there. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Erica. With that piece, I was one of the people who was like, how are you growing okra up in cold Seattle? How did you do that? And so using it as a metaphor for possibility, I think is important. It also speaks to the fact that the heat, there was enough heat to produce an okra pod in a place where there should not be enough heat to produce an okra pod. So we also have those conversations on climate crisis and catastrophe that we are actually currently inside of. And so I just want to also just speak to that, and that being, you know, part of sometimes we say we love a particular season or we love a particular climate, or the idea that we actually talk about how we love, we use love to describe the things that we love. Talks to the deepness and I think in the wideness of the emotion itself, and the ways in which artists and you all who use lens and technology and film in a particular way have the opportunity to capture a moment of love, a moment of bliss, a moment of sexiness. Sometimes you just see the photo and your mouth waters, or there's a film that you just remember because your heart, you know, just you love the film. And it might not be because it's a love story. It just touches you in a particular place. So thank you for all of your presentations this evening. And I want to invite each of you to give like a one breath close. And that could either be how people can see your work, what's next, or how they find you, or it can be on anything. It can be on how you love. And then we'll wrap the program for the evening, as I didn't have any questions come through the loop.
I just want to shout out everybody on the panel. You know, learned a lot from you all. Again, you know, dope, like to relive that moment, Sasha. Like, I literally forgot we did that, you know. So like, you come into the space and create and have that moment in time to just do your thing, you know. So it's just like, thank you for taking me back. And also to you, Ashara, thank you for just believing in me, believing in all of us, and just being a beacon of us artists and making things happen, you know. Really, really appreciate you.
Thank you. Sasha, do you want to respond, or just tell us how you feel for closing?
Sasha taking a deep breath.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a little one speaking to me about some things right now. I guess a breath would definitely be gratitude for community, for sure, and all the connections that we have. And also just sharing, right now, just meditating on like the power of, now this feels funny, like the power of our data and the power of our information and the power of our documentation and the power of all the things that we're creating and collecting. And I've just been meditating a lot about, you know, the ownership of that, where those things live, and what we're doing with them. So I'll just share that, ponder my inner thoughts with us all.
And Shaw?
I'm gonna have my grandma give the last word really quick.
Okay.
It'll be brief.
ده ما بيحين إلا على حقك. ده ما بيحين إلا على حقك. ده ما بيحين إلا على حقك.
She said, the heart only yearns for what it's meant for. القلب ده ما بيحن إلا على حقه.
Ashe, thank you for that. And Erica?
I'm just again super grateful for this space as well. I want to recall a photographic image that Adrian made of me at my studios with my dog, and just how when you kind of connect and you have community and share collaboration, that kind of really shines through in the images. And I feel that the three of us are really kind of connecting and making work that really matters. And Shah, I wanted to kind of just say what joy it is to know you, and to think about your work as an offering was just so beautiful, this offering to your family. And we'll take this offline, but I would love to spend more time with you in conversation, and to Sasha. We all need to do this offline, and also to Sasha as well. Just kind of hearing you talk about kind of finding people on the streets, and this photographic practice of kind of finding Black people, and this kind of question of whether they would give permission to have that image made, kind of brought me back to kind of my really early photography practice, where I knew nobody in the city, and that was how I found community. And so many people have come to me through that practice. And so I just want to thank you for reminding me of the power of the street, and the power of just our sheer Blackness, and how we always want to say yes to each other. I feel like that is just who we are. So yeah. And to Shara, I mean, I love you, and we have a deep collaboration, and I'm so excited to continue to be in your presence, and to be working with you, and to imagine more possibilities.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we're all in love with each other. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about being able to support each other in that way. I want to thank the Museum of Sonoma County for inviting us to host this exhibition and to host this conversation tonight. And all of the folks, including Lana and Jack and MJ, who supported the programming and the design and making sure that things were out for us. And we want to invite you next week. My co-curator, Lucia Olabumi Moma, is hosting a conversation as well, a virtual program called A Fugitivity Assembly, Artists on Gathering and Dispersal. And, she's asking the questions: why do writers and activists and artists form collectives? And what happens when you find that your mission or your directive or your purpose has been accomplished? So what does that mean to create a collective, perhaps, and then to disperse, right? And so Lucia will be in conversation with Dr. Jamal Betts, Luke Keza, Branford Verissimo, whose work is also part of the Collective Arising exhibition, and Taylor Brandon. And they'll be talking about their art practices, the movement, what's next, what's the legacy of continuation. And so if you look in the link in the chat, there's a link to RSVP for that. It is on November 1st from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Pacific time. And with that, I just want to say, I love you. I love you. I love you. And thank you. And gratitude to our ancestors who continue to hold us up and teach us that we're calling them all close to us, and that we do this work that our ancestors call on our names with the same love and reverence that we remember them. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Be well.
Thank you.
And go see the show.
And go see the show.
Go see the show.
Go up and see the show. I'm going to be up there on Saturday. So if anyone wants to come up and hang out with me, I'm going to be up on Saturday in Santa Rosa, right downtown, Santa Rosa, 7th Street. Come over.
For sure, I'm gonna tap in with you about flying out to getting to see it before it closes.
Okay, come on. All right, y'all.
Talk to
Hi,
y'all.
everyone. Best of luck.
See y'all offline.
Okay.